session where the Board of Trustees has an opportunity to all together interview the candidate. We appreciate your being here, and I know the candidate appreciates you being here. Those of you who were at the earlier session know and have been introduced to Dr. Stephen Ender, and we are going to launch right into this so we can move along. And Dr. Ender, we have, as a board, 7 questions for you that will be asked by different people. We'll let you allocate your time pretty much as you want to. We have an hour and a half set aside for this. And at the end of the time, whatever time you have left over, you can ask us questions, or you can tell people and us anything more about yourself that you think we need to know or you would like us to know, and we'll proceed in that fashion. And with your permission, we'll begin right away with Trustee James asking the first question.
Great.
Thank you. Welcome again, Dr. Hendricks, to our campus. My first question to you is, the college has benefited greatly from having had an excellent presidential leadership for many years. Many outstanding programs have been initiated, and the board supports the continuation of these programs. However, we realize that the next president will bring a fresh vision with new ideas and goals. Given that, what makes you uniquely qualified to serve as president of GRCC?
Thank you. I've spent some time really trying to study this institution. I understand that it is in many ways a magnificent institution, and I've said all along I'm really flattered to be here, quite frankly. I think the one area that I'm still a little unsure about what my own study assessment has kind of some of the conclusions that I've made. It's in your developmental education area, and it's are we providing, and I used the word pathway this morning and I'll use it again here, a structured pathway for a person who matriculates at the institution, has gone through our testing program. We've determined that some initial assistance and some basic skills at various levels are necessary in order for that learner to compete in our curriculum. Once we know that, do we have a program in place that assures all of us that if that student will work through these steps, his or her percentages of success are much greater than if we allowed that student to come in, be tested, and then move through the curriculum in any manner that they wanted. And I'm not sure that that system is in place at this point. The value add for me, I have been involved in developmental education now at 4 different institutions, and I've developed from startup those 4 programs. I think I have, through evaluation work, a very good idea what works, and I think I could bring a lot of expertise to that particular area of this institution.
Any follow-up questions?
Thank
well,
you.
Yes, I do have one. Excuse me, I'm kind of getting settled in here. Dr. Ender, you spoke about building relationships with the K-12 system, and can you marry that thought with developmental education in terms of what you would do to partner with K-12 so that it's not such an issue at point of entry into the college?
No, I'd be pleased to. And that's where the real work, I think, needs to be done, quite frankly. And the partnership is, and I don't think we're having these conversations, as I said earlier today, our English requirements for our beginning composition course should align with the outcomes of the English courses that the student has taken in high school. The same with our math algebra course and algebra 2 in high school. the conversation needs to take place is with our faculty and the faculty from the secondary schools, the leadership in these disciplines, to assure ourselves that learning outcomes from simple to complex, they just move through a continuum. And the handoff is, here's where it stops in high school, and here's where it begins in college. And do those learnings in the curriculum in high school give me the foundation to come into where it starts in college and I can compete? And so you look for the gaps in that. And then you determine, well, is it the college expectation too high? Is the secondary expectation too low? I don't know what the answers are. But until we get that alignment straight, we will continue. And I've been working this for, I can't believe it, 35 years. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. So the goal is to be able to reduce the amount of time and money a learner has to dedicate in college because of the skill sets that they bring to college. So the goal is to really help. And again, until we have the conversation, are we too high or are they too low? Mm-hmm. But we've got to close that gap, and we're not going to do that in a silo. We've got to get good people at the table with the skill sets to really investigate this question and make changes if they need to be made.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, you're satisfied? Anyone else? All right, we'll move along to Trustee Margot Anderson.
Dr. Ender, Grand Rapids Community College serves as a diverse community and student body and prides itself on having a diverse faculty. Describe what diversity means to you and provide some specific examples of your commitment to diversity within the institutions you have led. Share evidence of your personal professional development as it relates to diversity.
Thank you. Well, I also was quite pleased to see that your student population, your ethnic diversity is about 20%, which is, I think, very, very commendable. Diversity to me is not black and white. It certainly includes black and white. When I think of diversity, I think of ethnicity, quite frankly. I think of sexuality. I think of race. I know that the world that our students will engage with is made up of that complete constellation and rainbow of people, and the more that this institution mirrors that world, the more the likelihood that our student will be successful. So it's an obligation that we have. In my own institution, I'm in a county with 2% minority population. When I came to the college, we had 2% minority population. We're now approaching 4 years later. That has been very intentional, because if my students go to Philadelphia and work, they're going to believe they've gone to a foreign country, because it's not going to look like Westmoreland County. And we just need to really help people understand that people are people, and kind of get through some of these biases that have been ingrained in us, at least where I am presently living. I will tell you that my most significant personal and professional experience around understanding diversity and from the impact of the minority person, I worked my way through college. In one of my jobs, I was a recreation leader for the city of Richmond during my, I think, sophomore and junior year. And Richmond is a high percentage African American population, basically in the cities. And I was put on a playground in an area of the city, high poverty, high unemployment, and I was probably the only white person within a 10-block radius. And in their wisdom, I was put on the playground to be the recreation director. Well, I discovered personally how lonely it feels to be one among many that are different than yourself. and I learned to appreciate gestures of friendship that I took for granted in the other world that I lived in. And it did more to sensitize me to what students must feel when they are a very, very small population in a predominantly white community. So for a personal and professional experience, I will never forget the learnings that I had as a 19, 20-year-old person. In my own work, I've dedicated considerable time. One of the programs that I am most proud of to this day is when I was with the state system of higher education in Pennsylvania. We were still then under federal desegregation laws. This is in the mid-'80s, trying to desegregate these public universities. And we started a program where we would recruit about 300 high school students from the city of Philadelphia, the neighborhood schools, not the magnet schools, so the 22 high schools in Philadelphia. And we would recruit 10th graders. And the program model was 2 weeks after their 10th grade year in school, they went to one of our system campuses and participated in what can best be described as an outward bound experience, quite frankly. Learning how to work with other folks and facing challenges and being successful. And we did a lot of testing to see basic skill levels and what was needed in that junior and senior year to be successful in the high school setting. As juniors, we brought those 300 students to my institution, and we created a 3-week college simulation experience. So you came in, you had orientation, you registered for 5 mini courses: composition, quantitative course, a science course, a social science course, and a fine arts course. Typical freshman curriculum, first semester. Each course had a syllabus. Each course had outcomes, evaluation, and measurement. What we were doing, and I think we were doing it very successfully, now these students, to get in, the one criteria was you had to have passed Algebra 1 in the 10th grade to be eligible, to be accepted. Well, what I learned was Algebra 1 at High School A is much different than Algebra 1 at High School B and C. There was no curriculum of algebra that was consistent across these 22 schools. You had to have a CB average. I had students that were 1 and 2 in their class that scored 550 and 600 on SAT scores. I mean, so for those students without this program, they would have gone to college somewhere, and they would have faced a curriculum where what the input or feedback from the high school was, well, you're a smart person, you're a learner, you're doing very well in your courses. Those courses had absolutely very little to do with the reality of curriculum and learning and readiness for college. And within 2 or 3 weeks, what happens to a student like that in a college setting is they become completely overwhelmed. And they get behind in a course, always. They figure that out when they take their first test, and they go, oh my goodness, I really got to start studying for that course. So they do. 2 other courses start to slip. And before you know it, you end up the first semester with a horrible grade point average. So we were trying to simulate the intensity of a college curriculum through that 3-week experience. Their senior year, we then matriculated these students to one of 14 schools in the state system of higher education in Pennsylvania with a tuition waiver. Their retention and graduation rates were as good as the entering freshman cohorts at any of those 14 schools. That program started with 300 students in Philadelphia. When I was done 10 years later, we were implementing the same model in Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Reading, Erie, what would be called the metropolitan city areas of the Commonwealth, working with about 1,000 high school students.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I understood. Was that targeted primarily toward minority students?
Well, you can't do that. So we targeted on income. You can do that. Guess what? That all matched up just fine. You know, we had about 20% Caucasian, 80% Latino, and African American, and some Asian.
Dr. Ender, you
Yes, ma'am.
mentioned that you had increased the participation at your school from 2% to 5% over the several years. What did you do to make that happen, or was it just automatically happen?
No, there were some intentional things that we did and that we're doing. I was very fortunate. African American gentleman in our community, Dr. Rod Booker, who was the band director at one of our largest high schools for 25 years, and he's the Pied Piper of music in Westmoreland County. He retired and called me and said he'd like to do some work for the college, and we discussed what that work might be, and I said, well, Rod, what I want is a choir. He said, I can do a choir, don't worry. He said, I can do a choir. He said, can I do an orchestra too? I said, yeah, you can do an orchestra if you want. Well, Rod Booker, in his contacts with high school students and the development of that community choir, that is community and our students, helped to bring minority students to my campus. We didn't have basketball teams, and I do not want this to be any conjecture of stereotyping, but I felt if we started basketball, we would get more minority students as both players and their friends, and we did significantly, quite frankly. So that helped us quite a bit. We did not have any strategic plan or goals around diversity on our campus. So as we developed our strategic plan, we rewrote our mission and values statement, valuing diversity as an entity. That then gave me what the leverage I needed to get a diversity committee up and running that's not just made up of our campus staff, faculty, and students, but has several external members from the community, primarily African American leadership. I have an African American trustee. I asked him to join that committee. They're bringing Bernice King in for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter in about 2 weeks for a major speaking address. So we are very intentionally putting money behind that. Our budget is as big as this one. So when I put $20,000 from my operating budget to the diversity committee, that was a statement. You know, we held everybody else flat. The only thing that we put new budget dollars on this year fit the strategic plan, and that was one area that. And $20,000 may not seem like a lot, but in my institution, $20,000 is a lot of money to put behind a program.
Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Ender, I asked this from yesterday's candidate, and I wanted to give you a chance to respond. If a community member came to a board meeting or to your office to complain about, under the auspices of our diversity series, a lecturer that shared his or her opinions on lifestyle choice and felt that that was in some way not in concert with community values and was it seemed to be offensive to this person, what would be your response to such a situation?
And certainly that's not unheard of, to have someone have that concern. It is a difficult. The problem here is a clash of folks and their value systems, which, and we hold our values, we cherish them, they're deep for us. But I would have to come back around to the world that we live in, and the fact of the matter is. It's 10% of our population gay, probably, maybe more. Are gays now comfortable coming out of the closet? Yes, more and more and more. To hide from from that reality and to continue a stereotype or there's something wrong with a person if they're gay is not helping our student body at all. And it is the purpose of the college to help folks in issues of diversity and tolerance and to have the very discussion that I would be having with that individual. Not trying to change your mind, but please allow me to express my perspective on what that issue is. And that would be the tone of my conversation, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Before you move on?
Sure.
Okay. Dr. Ender, continuing with the diversity thought, talk to us about the ethnic and gender makeup of your administrative staff, your most immediate, as well as your hiring practices throughout your college currently.
When I came to the college on the cabinet level, there was actually 3 vice presidents, white, and I have 1 woman HR director. We just recently searched for an associate. We created an associate vice president for academics responsible for institutional effectiveness, learning outcomes, strategic plan. We hired an African American woman for that position. I'm very proud of the fact that she is now in my cabinet. And decided 2 weeks ago to add 2 more folks to the cabinet, both women, 1 in my foundation and my PR director. So I clearly value the diversity of all those thinkers around me and have brought in actually the 2 additional because of what I believe they will bring to the table. But I will tell you the associate VP, and then actually our finalists, both finalists were African American, and there was no way I was going to let that opportunity go by. We have now a great, great person there. And for us as an institution, for Nicole to be there in the role modeling that she will be able to do for our students and staff, I think is wonderful. When I came on the faculty level, we had 1. Now remember, when I came, I had 72 tenure faculty members. I read the middle stage report and saw that, and I thought, oh, this has got to be, they must have left the 1 off here somewhere. You know, it has to be 172. But no, it was 72 and 400 odd adjuncts. We've intentionally turned that around because we put a faculty hiring program in place where we've hired 22 or 23 tenure track faculty lines in the last 3 years, because I was very upset that 60% of our curriculum and sections were being taught by adjunct, and I could not see how we could have leadership with that type of distribution of load between adjuncts and the tenure. On the hirings that we've made, we've increased our African American faculty from 1 to 2. It's tough in Western Pennsylvania, but I'm proud of that. And our percentage gender, we do have more female faculty members than male in our tenure lines.
Okay. All right. We'll proceed with Dr. Stearns having the next question.
Dr. Ender, I'm sure in your positions you realize the board is very concerned in as much as we have the ultimate fiduciary responsibility for operating the college. So we'd like to have you focus on the issues of finance and fundraising. We have approximately a $100 million budget here at GRCC. Would you provide specific examples of your fiscal leadership in managing budgetary issues?
I would be pleased to. I've actually had a responsibility for a budget of about $150 million when I was at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Understand there, about 80% of it was personnel, so there wasn't a whole lot left to work with, but there is a big number. Budgets and budget decisions, you have core expenses that are built into that budget. You know, you have utility expenses, you have rent expenses, you have the big elephant in the room, personnel expenses. And at the end of the day, you hope you have some discretionary dollars to work with. Those discretionary dollars, in my way of managing, really have to be linked to the strategic plan of the institution and the strategic tactics that institution has set out for itself for that year or the next couple of years. So as a leader, I believe it's my responsibility to, at the end of the day, link budget decisions when it comes to new funds moving to different areas of the institution to those initiatives that the board has determined with the institution that we want to pursue. I for about 10 years of my career, the grants I was talking about with the state system, it was about $1.2 million a year that I was working with there, and probably $100,000 for my salary, secretary, run our office. So during those 10 years, if I wanted a pencil, I bought the pencil. If I wanted a computer for the secretary, it came out of my grants. I wish every leader in higher education had to live on whatever they could bring into that budget, because you really begin to see zeros on pages as real dollars and not zeros on pages. When I was doing the budget at IUP, and deans would bring in, and deans never do this here, but there, they'd have some wild idea of some program they wanted to get going with it. You'd look at it and just try to figure out, where's the business plan behind this. So the litmus question was always, would you mortgage your house to do this deal? And the answer always was, that's not fair. That's not a fair question. I said, well, seriously, if you're so convinced that, this is and we're not talking about adding another faculty member. We're talking about, I want to start a program 2 counties over, and we're going to have 25 students, and I know if we put the resources there, it's going to work. Well, I know you think that, but, where is the business plan? Where is the need analysis? Where is the business and industry saying they need those people? But when you start to personalize that a little bit, then you have to vet it somewhat differently than if it's somebody else's money that you're spending, quite frankly. There was a fundraising piece to the question.
Yes. Before we get to that, we all face in education with our budgets the increasing healthcare cost issue. Have you at Westmoreland been able to do anything creative in terms of reducing healthcare costs?
Yes, we have. When I interviewed at Westmoreland, and I anticipated this question, and I do want folks to know philosophically where I am personally around the issue of employees and their health care. And I said, as I said to my colleagues at Westmoreland, look, our neighbors pay for their health care. They help pay for their health care. And those same neighbors are paying their taxes so that we can have these great jobs. And to think that we can continue into infinity not paying any health care is just thinking that does not recognize the reality of what's happening in health care in this country. Because when I went there, none of us paid health care. It was all, and we are self-insured. So it started, and the trend line on this was when they went self-insured, and that was back in the mid-90s, 94, 95. It was about $900,000 a year for the college. The 3 years before we negotiated this contract, it had risen to $2 million a year. I thought it was important that we help with that. We being me and everybody else. And so I was very, I didn't hide that from the interview process there. When it came time to negotiate for health care, there was some criteria that I wanted to really use, if you will, as a backdrop to trying to figure out how we might structure this so that it was fair, and so that we could begin the discussion with the faculty and staff associations. So the kind of rules of engagement were, 1, if you pay to help with health care, we're not going to take milk out of your baby's mouth. 2, the first year that you help with health care, your net take-home pay will be greater In other words, your raise, the reduction in health care, it will not be less. So you won't feel it taking dollars out of how you balance your budget. And 3, and most important to me, and I'm very proud of my campus, quite frankly, for agreeing to this philosophy, the highest paid employee at the college will pay more for their health care than the lowest paid employee at the college. So, I mean, I didn't want to structure something so, and it ended up being, of the $2 million we collect from all of the employees, it was 8% we were looking for, about $158,000. And we structured that so that if you're a single employee on my campus, your health care contribution is 0.64% of gross. If you are, highest payer is married with children, they pay 1.87% of their gross. I do not have children on my payroll anymore, so I don't fit in I have a VP who's the highest payer of health care because he still has children in his home. But I have clerks and custodians that biweekly contribute $8, $12, $13 to their health care. On the other hand, I contribute about $6,000 to my health care. And that's our faculty and our staff felt like the criteria that we had set out to accomplish were met. We also, and in our contract, we put together a committee of faculty, staff, and administrators to monitor health care, because the other piece to this is if we can keep our total costs at that $2,212,222, we won't have to ask for any additional contributions. So clearly, the more we can control this by how we access, the better we will all be in the long run. Even though, quite frankly, I did not see people abusing health care. What I did see, and I still see, and it's upsetting to me, is we have too high a percentage of our employees that are not taking advantage of the benefits of the program by getting regular screening for various tests that we should all, be screened for. It's not happening, and that is the key to prevention, and that's something we're going to have to address.
I think the rest of the question you covered at breakfast, Dr. Ender, so I'm comfortable.
And we'll ask Trustee Magini for the next question.
Okay. As you realize, this college board is committed to the concept of policy governance. I think you were expecting this question. As president of this college, you would be expected to work within this framework. To that end, describe your personal working relationships with your present board of trustees, or also in any other organizations in which you have been a part. And then, using the policy governance framework, please take an idea from inception to implementation.
Okay. I've worked with several boards during my tenure and several leadership groups. I've always been successful. I'll be quite candid. I'm working with the board now where I have some relationships that are not as positive as I'd like them to be. Primarily some differences in philosophy, I think, and an eagerness by some board members to want to manage the institution, which I believe is that's why you hire a president. So we've had some problems in that area of day-to-day work at the institution. Saying that, I will tell you that one of the reasons why I was attracted to this job was not only the institution, but the way the president works with the board. And I do like the INS policies and the way the board monitors the work of the institution. And to that extent, if we took something from beginning to end, and I know that developmental coursework and retention of students is part of your framework, and if we were to determine that we were going to do some significant work in that area and perhaps dedicate some significant resources to make it work. I can see the board requesting at the retreat that you have a monitoring report in that area that would look at the outcomes of what we've been able to achieve by putting those resources to work.
Okay, a follow-up on this is that if you were to be offered this job, how would you intend to upgrade your policy governance skill set? What would be your plans to learn more about it?
Oh, I'd probably pull Kathy Mullins in a room and wouldn't let her go until I had it all straight in my mind. And I'd work with my board and board chair.
There is a possibility, not a possibility, with this coming May election, we will have one more trustee right now, of course, we don't know whether they would have any policy governance background or not. What would you foresee as potentials for perhaps training for all of us?
Well, I would assume that there are folks out there that could come in and help not only myself but new trustees, and then of course I think if we do have a new trustee, take advantage of a consultant. I mean, what's on the table is policy governance, but what we'd also be trying to do is build cohesiveness with a new group member to your board. So I can see frying a lot of fish, quite frankly, helping me and the new board member really get our arms around policy governance, but also this board, existing board, and myself beginning to bond with the new trustee, which I think is incredibly important. You have a small board, 7 people. You need to be able to fight and then at the end of the day smile at each other and get your work done. That can happen with 7 people, but it takes a little work. So I think it might be good to bring in someone early on.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up. Dr. Ender, you mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure the audience caught it, but you have a 17 board member right now.
15.
15, okay. Have you ever worked with a 7 to 9 number in your experiences?
The board at IUP, when I was the executive deputy to the president, the only people that met with the board in executive session was the president and myself. That was a board of 9 individuals. So I have worked with smaller boards.
Appointed or elected?
They were, well, in the, by charter, those board members are appointed by the governor, but they must represent different sectors of the institution. So alumni were represented, students were represented, a member of the legislature was always on those boards. So I saw that board structure and appointment from the governor's office much different than I see the appointment of 15 board members by county commissioners in my county.
I do have a follow-up, Mr. Chair. I will ask my famous question that I asked the candidate yesterday. I think it was a question that I asked you in our initial interview with you. As you have had an opportunity to observe this morning, meeting all 7 of us, I think you have come away knowing that we're all 7 very strong individuals. I'd like to know, how will you work with each of us to make sure that we are all treated equally and that we will, for an example, we'll all have the same information. We do have a policy among us of no surprises. Mm-hmm. So would you share with us, please?
Sure. I really look forward to an opportunity to work with 7. I will tell you that. And I would like to first just develop relationships with each of you. I think it's important that you get to know me as not only a president, but as Steve Ender, and me, you, and your interests and your backgrounds, because it would give me a better perspective. You represent your communities as to what you bring to the board table and as you perceive the constituents that have brought you to the board table. I would tell you boards get in trouble when individual board members begin to conclude amongst themselves as one or two or three and leave other board members out of that conversation, or when presidents start to work individually with chairs. Now, in my relationship now, the chair, by their bylaws, represents the board. So the chair is my boss. As I understand your policies and as I've read them, the chair is not the president's boss. The board is who the president works for.
Yes.
Significant communications between the president and board members, either through conversations that will have an effect on your ends policies or through written communication, they just have to be shared by the president with all members of the board. If it's going to impact the college, I mean, that's the litmus test. Does this conversation impact the college because of the role that it may take? All the board members need to know about that. It just doesn't work any other way, quite frankly, from my perspective.
It's pretty astute that the chair is not the president's boss. The chair is the person that they put out front to let everybody throw bricks at.
That's the way I figured it out.
Any further on that question? Yes, you do help.
That's right. We just set you out there.
You help the brick throwers.
Not at all.
Trustee Verberg has the next question.
What does the president need to do to foster an environment that supports academic freedom, values innovation, and simultaneously respects opposing perspectives?
Let me tell you what you can't do if you want those outcomes. You can't be rigid in your thinking. You cannot be rigid in your and make hasty conclusions to different situations that you encounter. You must reach out to faculty for consultation around issues. Faculty, as I said, either at breakfast this morning and students, it was at the last session. People have to know that door is open for them. You know, the president can't hide from the very issues that you're talking about. I was a professor, full professor, and I taught on and off for a long time, and I value academic freedom. I would tell you at times I think that it can be I've seen instances where I believe individuals have abused that term, quite frankly. It's the best way. I think we get into some problems, and the one that I see the most is our political views. And, you know, if we're teaching politics, if we're in political science and we're talking about political parties and how they work and what they represent, that's wonderful. Advocating in a history or a geography class for a local candidate is I don't know if that's academic freedom or not, quite frankly. And a president has to be willing to have that very conversation with people. And okay, maybe I'm wrong. Help me understand why I might have a different perspective than you do. But you have to engage. You know, if you want those outcomes you're talking about, that president has to engage with his or her campus and its faculty and staff.
Dr. Ender, do you believe that if you were toe-to-toe, back to the wall, you would 100% support the issue of academic freedom? On issues, we dealt with issues.
It's pretty hard to, you know, I can think of I have not seen, except for the one that, when we have some flagrant using the classroom as a venue to support local politics or national politics, I have a problem with that. The student activity group wants to bring a gay or lesbian person on this campus to give an address through their lecture series. I don't have any problem with that, quite frankly. we want to have something in the theater that some people might think is offensive, you advertise it as potentially being offensive. You give people warnings about who the audience is and what they may see or encounter. But it is about the freedom of expression. It is about understanding there are different perspectives and we live and value things differently. And that's where academic freedom, I believe, and it is a luxury that we have in higher education that we dare not abuse because the legislatures in our states or in this country might try to take it away from us.
Well, we've been talking a lot on and off about students, and what this board would like to know is what does, in your eyes, in your heart, what does a community college student look like? And then who are these students in your impression?
Well, you get a lot of different looks here. Now, I would tell you that in some ways, Steve Ender looks like a community college student. When I was 18 and my options were to go to Vietnam or go to college, I chose college. My father said, "That's great, but there's no money here and you're a poor risk in that area." He was very clear. So the deal he made with us is, I have a twin brother. He said, "You boys go down to the local college and I'll tell you what, we'll let you live here free and won't charge any room and board as long as you're in school full time." That experience is not unlike many of the students that I see coming to my community college. What is different is I had room and board provided for me. And we have many students at my college and in community colleges across this country, and I'm sure here, that are living on their own. They're working. They have kids, maybe a kid and no spouse. But many hundreds of thousands of community college students are trying to better their lives through education without a lot of anchors to help them. And then what we're seeing today as the costs of higher education escalate clearly out of a middle-class family's ability to pay is more of the traditional 18, 19-year-old student coming to our campuses to take advantage of the first 2 years before they would then transfer and matriculate. The difference still in Grand Rapids is you're an institution who, in your roots, is liberal arts education, 2-year junior college, and so you've already distinguished yourself as a transfer institution. So over the years that you've moved from that liberal arts to the more comprehensive community college, I'm sure this student body has changed to reflect more of what I think I know as a community college student and what I would see here at Grand Rapids Community College.
You know, part of that picture is the same, and you mentioned that. Talk to us about, having spent 30 years in K-12 education, I keep saying that student looks different technologically. How can community colleges stay technologically on the leading edge when kids are coming wired as they're walking around?
There again, there's a bipolar population there.
I'm sorry, there's a what population?
Bipolar when it comes to technology.
Okay.
If your family has money, yeah, you understand a little bit about technology, a lot. If you're poor and have been poor, you probably don't have that same understanding at all. So you're going to have learners coming to you that we see it all the time, that in our computer class, which all students take, I mean, we need to figure out a way to exempt them out because they know how to do Excel. They know how to do all of it. We have other students that don't know what to do with a keyboard that are coming in. Now, here's the dilemma for higher ed, and if you want to, just keep printing money load it up in the dump truck, back it over to IT, and throw it through the door. Because that curve of what you can buy never stops. Never. So what we need to do is figure out where on that curve allows us to know that we are taking advantage of the technology we need for the learners we support. Not the technology we need, because out of 15,000 students, 500 get it, and out of 250 tenured faculty, 10 get it. Well, if you want to get way out in the curve, you can spend $1 million on them. It's out there. And I don't know what analysis has been done here, but I would be careful with that notion that you can never have enough, because in IT, you can never have enough.
Any further follow-up on that? Dr. Ender, I have the last question. Well, it's not really a question. It's to give you an opportunity, but we're running a little ahead of schedule, so I'm going to take the liberty of asking a question that I want to give you the opportunity to answer a question that I think a lot of people have heard a lot of things from you today, and they have perhaps an understanding of where your heart is and where you're coming from. But why do you want to be the president of Grand Rapids Community College, and what are you going to bring to us? Why are you ready for this job as opposed to staying where you're at or something else?
Well, I've said to many people that are close to me that this job represents, in my mind, a culmination of the last 35 years of my work. I am quite flattered to be with you. This is a large, complex institution. Looks like a university in some ways, but you're not. You're a community college. I will tell you, you probably could never get me to a university again, ever. I mean, community colleges get things done, and they respond quickly, and they are providing for those people who desperately need education, opportunities for that education, and I am just proud to be part of that work. I'm a first-generation college kid. You know, I was a poor risk, according to Bob Ender. You know, if you looked at my first 2 years of undergraduate school, he was right. But Dr. Cullen Bushway turned me around. And I've been Dr. Bushway for lots and lots of students, and I've watched that occur because I know it happened with me. Community colleges, they work with the right people for the right reasons. Grand Rapids, I just think that Karen and I can make a real contribution in this community. I've never been in a community where people are so friendly, quite frankly. There are other, I mean, yeah. I wish it were warmer here. You know, that would really. My wife reminds.
We'll work on that.
My wife reminds me that we'll be the oldest people moving into Michigan. But I just think it's a real opportunity for me, and I think I bring value add to you. I think at the end of this day, people are going to say, we really like that guy, and we think that he can provide the leadership we need. And when I go to work for with people in this community and on this campus, I think they're going to say, we really like this guy. This guy brings value to our table. This guy represents Grand Rapids Community College. That college brings value to this table. I'm not being egotistical. I've been a leader all my life. The only thing I can figure out that makes me different from other people is I just step forward. You know, anytime I'm mad at myself because I'm too busy, I just look in the mirror. It's my own fault. You know, I just can't help that about me. But I do think people, I'm not the brightest guy in the room, but I think people respect the opinions that I have. And I think I have the ability to lead people to places where maybe they didn't think they could go, but I know they can. Because I've been to places I never thought I could go, because I figured out I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the risk, and I'm just going to do this. Coming here, it's a risk. This is not. I know, Karen, I know where we are. This is all new. We're leaving lots of things if we come here. And the biggest risks in my life have been the biggest payoffs in my life. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I don't think I would disappoint you.
Thank you.
So it sounds as though your career goals after 35 years, we may be able to convince you to stay for a while. If everything.
I am not going through this again. I am. I've defended my dissertation enough. No, I'm at a point in my career that I would hope that this is the last stop in the road for me, quite frankly.
So if offered the job, you would accept, it sounds like.
That's from what I know right now, yes.
Okay, well, now.
I have one more question.
Oh, yes, go ahead, please.
During our previous interview, you did say your dog would not like it.
Molly is going to hate it here, actually.
How do you intend to climatize Molly?
We're going to buy a bigger coat for her.
Thank you.
Is it really all that different in where you live?
Well, I'll tell you.
Or is it drier?
No, it's no, it's humid there. When I've been watching this now, you're on my computer for weather. I look at it. You're typically 5 to 10 degrees colder than we are in Pittsburgh. We're also having a pretty nasty winter like you are. The winter doesn't really, it really doesn't bother me. I've lived in winter now for 28 years, so I can't. But you just think as you get older, you're supposed to be going south, not north. But we'll be fine. I'm not worried.
Summers are beautiful. So.
I've been told that. I hope it lasts longer than 2 months.
Yeah. Well, that we don't know.
They last about one Saturday in July.
Gary, my wife is in the audience. Please don't make comments like that.
Just kidding. From April to November, it's wonderful.
Just like at home.
Yeah. Well, any other questions before I throw out this last bit here? Well, now we'd like to give you the opportunity to ask any questions you have of this board or provide us with any additional information you would feel relevant to your candidacy.
Well, I would only ask to the board, what are the expectations of the president the first 12 months on the job?
Who starts, huh?
Who wants to take a shot?
Well, I think we have great expectations. Certainly you have to hit the ground listening and learning. You don't know our culture and our citizens, and so certainly reaching out to one of the catchphrases for GRCC is we're the community's college, and so I think getting to know the college community internally and externally is certainly an important goal. But I think we would expect you to become immersed in current initiatives, both on the liberal arts and workforce development sides, and start right away assessing where you think we are and giving what leadership you think is important to move those initiatives forward.
We have a very active foundation, and our foundation leader is here in the audience today, and we sort of shortchanged him by not asking the question because we discussed that a lot this morning. But I wanted to assure him that the first words out of your mouth when that question came up was that you're not afraid to make the ask. And we just would expect you to work with Andy so he can teach you how to make the big ask. And but I know that you're very capable of doing that, and you've told us how your wife gets involved in matters of not running the college, but outside matters, and how to hide our checkbooks. So we're all alerted. The thing that I would have as an expectation of the president is to engage the board in your presidency. Now, I know that we're a policy governance board, and we all know that we don't micromanage the college, or even for that matter attempt to manage it. We work through our chief executive. He has limitations, he has goals to meet, he has reports to provide so that we can see how you're doing. But for 12 years I've pleaded to make this board more relevant to the community. We can go out on our own, and we do. We have our own constituencies. During the millage campaign, we were very active. But I think 12 months out of the year, there's a resource sitting here of 7 people that is underutilized and not very relevant to this college. And if you're talking about innovation, some innovation in that area I think could be very helpful, because we are elected. I mean, this board represents nearly 100,000 votes in our community. Some people voted for,
And that's just Ellen.
Yeah, that's just Ellen. Mayor James. But, we do have constituencies, but we need to be other places, the same places the president needs to be, out in the county. We have become, in some quarters, perceived as Grand Rapids Community College, not the Kent ISD's community college. We have a broad scope. Before I leave, it's my intention to bring before our board something that we've discussed many times, and that's a change in our name. We have a lot of discussion over that, but to me, there needs to be a perception that we're more than just belonging to the city of Grand Rapids. We need to get away from our old GRPS roots even more, because we're not the K-14. I mean, as you say, it's a complex institution staffed by some incredible people. We have faculty that are the cream of the crop, and they work 12 months out of the year. I went here, and I know what kind of a start. That comment you made about Bob Ender, thinking you're a poor risk, he must have known Ed Schenck. And, so we're very proud of this place, and we want to be helpful. So that's the thing that I would expect.
One of the expectations I think we all expect, if I can speak for my colleagues, is that, and you made reference to it, rarely will you find a place at all levels are extremely talented people. Mm-hmm. And they seem to support each other. Doesn't mean that there isn't some infrastructure disagreements. We're not, utopia. But I would expect, as my colleagues hopefully would, that you begin to learn everyone and be there for everyone. And we know that you will be surrounded by incredibly talented people. And one of the biggest fears of a new president is he or she is going to clean house, or will I be here in 6 months? And and not suggesting that some of that just may or may not happen. We're not projecting that. But the more you know people and the more you engage with them, I think an expectation is to listen for a great deal of time.
I'm glad if I can make a comment. That is not my style of leadership. And if there's anyone out there that thinks, here comes a new person, my job's on the line, the only reason that anyone should think that is they know that their job should be on the line. But I come in here with the perspective that there are very competent, capable people at this institution that are, as I would be, thrilled to be working here, and that we go out and do our best every day. And that's all that I come in here with. There's no team that I have sitting in the back room that I want to bring in. I had the same philosophy when I entered into Westmoreland. There were some deans that really didn't want to be there. It was obvious. But it took 2 years for them to make that decision. You find out. It's not. You don't have to really ask people to leave. The bar gets raised, and those that really don't get excited about that go, this is not where I want to be anymore.
And then just one last thought is with an extremely talented faculty, because as a teaching institution, that's also a very integral part of who we are in building relationships.
I noticed that. I was very pleased with the number of actually PhDs in your science area when I was going through the qualifications of your faculty. Now, you have a talented staff here. And when I say staff, I use it in a very generic way.
You would find that probably in other departments as well, or people working on them as well.
And one of our initiatives that we are engaged in after 2 millage defeats is community conversations. And so we've taken the initiative to go into the areas where we have not been maybe very popular or who do not understand Kent Intermediate School District and all of the makeup of that. So we have gone to 2 areas, 3 to date, and one was south area, Caledonia area, and we've been to Comstock Park, which is a north area, and then we recently had a community conversation with our students to find out what they like, what they don't like, and how can we improve in our services. So I hope that would be an initiative that you would continue, because that is how we learn. And as Gary said, we have a lot of expertise here within the 7 of us. So we really would like to continue that effort.
One of the things that I'd like to see happen is that, Dr. Ender, you hit the ground running, okay? The more you ask, the more you receive. And I'd also like to say to you, if we do select you as our next president, don't be afraid to bring some of your ideas. Put them on the table. I would say as soon as possible. So I guess that would be.
I have a hunch you're not shy about bringing your ideas.
Not at all.
I have one more expectation as the trustee director with the state organization. I believe, and I think my colleagues will concur, that Michigan has an exemplary community college association. And I think this is where you're going to need to also spend some time. I know we have understood what your local your local responsibilities would be, but there also we have high expectations according to what you're going to need to do with being involved with the state organization and the other community college presidents and community college trustees, as well as acting nationally as well with some of our networks with the CQUIN, the Continuous Quality Improvement Network, and so on.
I am very active in our Commission for Community Colleges, and if I were to leave Westmoreland, I had been asked to be the vice chair of that group starting next year, which would have led to the chairmanship of the following year. So I like to get engaged at the state level. Nationally, I sit on 2 commissions, one for ACE and one for the Community College Association Workforce Commission there. The biggest, as I responded to the question you asked me to respond to when I came in for the initial interview, my problem will be just myself and trying to get out and do. There's not a thing you've said that does not surprise me or that I already know I need to do when I get here. Trying to do that locally and then statewide presence and national presence. What I've found in my current position is it took me the first year to 18 months to really do the work locally before I felt like I could give the attention at the state and now the national commissions that I'm on. I mean, you just have to figure out how you're going to spend your time. But when you come in, the first 18 months, you just need to be very, very engaged with the college and the community. Have to be.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else you'd like to ask us?
No, because I don't know if I can answer any more questions at this point.
Anything else you'd like to tell us?
Well, we certainly would like to clear up the fact that we didn't cause your foot accident.
No, you did not.
Okay, all right. Well, people think I'm mean.
Well, I want to thank Dr. Ender for being with us today. As promised, I believe the board has delivered exemplary candidates for your consideration and review, and now we have some hard work to do. We intend to begin that work this afternoon at 1:30, and we will be meeting in the boardroom on the 5th floor of the main building, and you are cordially invited to be there to attend our deliberations. There will be an opportunity before those deliberations to begin, as there always is at our meetings, to share comments and thoughts that you might have. We are delighted that Ruth Ender was able to join us as well, and again, we thank Dr. Ender and we thank all of you. And just in case anybody didn't know, Ruth, would you stand up so that those who weren't here this morning can tell who you are? I'm sorry. I got that. I'll be all right, though. Names are not my forte. I'm just a lawyer. It's usually defendant.